Number 10. Sigiriya. Starting off the list today is the ancient rock city of Sigiriya, located in present-day Sri Lanka. What's really amazing about this lost city is that it's built into a giant rock. It's an ancient city literally carved into a massive stone that rises about 600 feet above the ground in the middle of an otherwise flat and uninteresting landscape. Ever since foreigners have stepped foot on the island nation of Sri Lanka, the lost city of Sigiriya has baffled them. It was designated as a Cultural World Heritage Site in 1982, and it is still an important location for research and archaeology. The ancient city is steeped in mystery and intrigue. Most historians agree that the area surrounding Sigiriya had been inhabited ever since prehistoric times. This means the giant rock had been used as shelter for 5,000 years. But even though our ancient ancestors may have taken shelter there, the city of Sigiriya became truly famous in the 5th century, when it was transformed into a magical place. King Kashyapa transformed the enormous rock into a fortress and pleasure garden. This is the same king who assassinated his father and stole the throne from his brother. Because King Kashyapa feared that there would be a retaliation against him for stealing the throne and committing patricide, he decided to live inside the fortified palace high up on the giant rock. He made Sigiriya an impenetrable fortress. But even still, this ancient city was overrun and defeated in 495. The rightful heir destroyed his brother and took the throne. And the city of Sigiriya was transformed into a monastery for Buddhist monks, where it operated up until the 14th century before fading into the history books. Number 9. Sanchi. Sanchi is an ancient lost city from India. It has an impressive history, stretching back at least 1,000 years. The city had its origins in the 3rd century BC, and construction continued all the way until the 11th century. The city was ultimately abandoned in the 13th century after the death of Buddhism in India, and Sanchi then remained empty and neglected until it was rediscovered in 1818 by a British officer. The most famous part of this immense Buddhist complex is its great stupa, located at the very top of the tallest hill in Sanchi town. It's considered to be one of the oldest stone structures in all of India, and it was the first major piece of Sanchi to be built in the 3rd century by Emperor Ashoka. Furthermore, the Great Stupa was allegedly constructed at the very place where the emperor's wife was born. Sanchi has 4 decorated gateways, each one facing a cardinal direction and depicting various life events from the Lord Buddha. Sanchi was once considered to be one of the most important Buddhist locations in all of ancient India, and the fact that such an important place was abandoned goes to show just how completely the majority of the country gave up on Buddhism hundreds of years ago in favor of Hinduism. Number 8. Pompeii. Pompeii is definitely the most famous lost city on the list today. However, Pompeii was lost because of a natural disaster and not because of abandonment. It's considered to be the best preserved ancient Roman city, all thanks to the blankets of ash that cover the town when Mount Vesuvius erupted on August 24th, 79 AD. Volcanic debris fell upon the city, followed by clouds of insanely hot gases. Buildings were destroyed, the entire population was either crushed or suffocated, and Pompeii became covered in ash. Then, for centuries, Pompeii slept inside its preserved state until the 1700s, when the city was finally rediscovered. What's really amazing about the lost city of Pompeii is that even today, new discoveries are being made all the time. The city was so effectively ruined that archaeologists are still digging petrified human remains out of the rubble. It might be the longest disaster recovery mission in human history. At the time of Pompeii's destruction, there was somewhere around 20,000 people living in the city. Almost none of them escaped. And while people are usually interested in the ghosts of Pompeii, not many people know about its origins. But Pompeii was actually settled by Neolithic inhabitants thousands of years ago. The city wasn't cultured by the Greeks until they settled in the area in the 8th century BC. Pompeii was mostly ruled by a Greek homogeny until the region was captured by an Italic tribe in the 5th century. The first time Pompeii is mentioned in the history books wasn't until 310 BC, when a Roman fleet landed at the port to try and subjugate the surrounding towns. Pompey teamed up with the local Italians and they revolted against Rome. However, the Romans won the battle and the south of Italy was absorbed into the Roman Empire. Number 7. Caral. Caral in Peru is an ancient city of pyramids. What's truly fascinating about Caral in Peru is that it's older than any other known civilization in the Americas. It's just as old as the pyramids of Egypt. According to the BBC, researchers are now thinking that the lost city of Caral could be a mother city, meaning it was a central city from which early humans branched out from. Keep in mind that in the earliest stages of human civilization, there were not very many of us. Civilization really only started in about 6 different places in the world. From these places, humans spread out over thousands of years. In the beginning, small family units turned into settlements, settlements turned into towns, and then a mother city was born. From that mother city, the rest of humanity spread out. Archaeologists now believe that Caral could have been the mother city of South America, basically the first major city ever on the continent. What's even more interesting is that even though Caral is 5,000 years old, archaeologists have found no trace of warfare. There were no mutilated remains and no weapons discovered. What archaeologists did find were musical instruments, drugs that may have been used as aphrodisiacs and hallucinogens, and other remains of one of the first peaceful societies in South America. Other than that, very little is known about this ancient city and its pyramids. Number 6. Tanis. Tanis was once the Egyptian capital, but you would never think that by looking at its remains. This lost city is a perfect example of how empires rise and fall and leave almost nothing behind. The city of Tanis was the capital of the 21st and the 22nd Egyptian dynasties. It was located on the Nile, making it a prosperous trade center. However, political upheaval made the city socially unstable, the waters of the Nile continued to rise, and Tanis was eventually forgotten. The actual ruins of Tanis eluded archaeologists until 1939, when a French researcher uncovered a burial tomb with a huge wealth of ancient artifacts. In fact, the royal tombs are all that remains of the once great city of Tanis. All other structures have been demolished and built over, all traces of the capital city have been erased, and the only thing remaining are a few ancient burial plots from thousands of years ago. Number 5. Mohenjo-Daro. Mohenjo-Daro is one of the oldest cities known to historians. Its ruins are currently located in southeastern Pakistan, and the city was only discovered in the 1920s. To this day, there are still huge questions surrounding the origins of the city. What type of culture thrived there? And why was it ultimately abandoned? Mohenjo-Daro was part of the ancient Indus civilization, who thrived in the 3rd century BC. But they only built a few cities and didn't really leave the Indus Valley. They weren't nearly as explorative as the neighboring kingdom of Mesopotamia. Nonetheless, most researchers agree that Mohenjo-Daro was far ahead of its time in terms of city structure. The layout of the city and its public buildings have indicated that the Indus Valley civilization was way ahead of several other ancient civilizations of the time. They were one of the first peoples to create a city in a grid format. This means that the designers of Mohenjo-Daro actually had to plan and develop it much like any modern city would be developed today. They even had a public water supply and sewage system, with flushing toilets and large public baths. And this was thousands of years before people in America were struggling with the same problem. Number 4. Troy. Troy is certainly the most mythical lost city ever. There may have been more films, books, and other pieces of entertainment made about the city of Troy and its destruction than almost any other ancient city. But it's hard to separate myth from reality. Was the Trojan city truly defeated by a wooden horse in the middle of the night? And did the gods really have influence over the Trojan War? The answer to both these questions is probably not. According to Live Science, the Trojan War probably took place at the end of the Bronze Age, if it ever took place at all, right around 12,000 BC. The war was fought between the Trojans and the Greeks, with the Greeks unable to take the ancient city of Troy because the Trojans would simply push them back into the sea. But considering how long ago this happened, nobody knows exactly how the Trojan War was fought, or how exactly it ended, or if it even occurred. What we do know is that Troy has been inhabited for about 4,000 years. It was never just a single city either. Troy has been destroyed and rebuilt at least 10 times, with the new city being built over the ruins of the old city. Troy has also changed names numerous times throughout the centuries. And while its history is quite complex throughout 4,000 years of inhabitants, the main thing you need to know is that during the Middle Ages, Troy fell into serious decline. By the 13th century AD, nothing was left of Troy except for a small farming community. Today, it's nothing more than a small tourist attraction in modern-day Turkey. Number 3. Machu Picchu. Everyone knows about Machu Picchu. It's one of the most visited tourist attractions in the world. But ask just about any person standing with their selfie stick inside the lost city of Machu Picchu where exactly they are, they probably won't have a clue. That's because Machu Picchu is a mysterious window into the past with a complex and cryptic history. We know that the ancient Incan civilization was the most powerful in all of South America, and it was them who constructed Machu Picchu. But the exact purpose and meaning of why they built such a grand city so high in the Andean forest is still a bit of a mystery. Also, nobody is entirely sure why it was abandoned and forgotten. So far as we know, Spanish conquistadors never discovered the ancient city, and none of the Incan descendants ever gave away its whereabouts. It wasn't found again until 1911 by an explorer and historian. This was because by the time the Spanish arrived in Peru, Machu Picchu wasn't in use anymore. It had already been abandoned. That meant there were no roads leading to it, and because it was so high up in the mountains, there was no reason for anyone to go looking for it. As for the lost city of Machu Picchu itself, the city was constructed in such a way that the temples and slopes of the roofs would catch and reflect sunlight. The effect was like a shining city of gold. Number 2. Ciudad Abre. Ciudad Abre is older than the Egyptian pyramids, Machu Picchu, and Stonehenge. Way before many of the most advanced civilizations that we know of were constructing pyramids and massive temples, people were living in Ciudad Abre, which is located today on the island of Orkney in Scotland. It is considered to be the best preserved Neolithic settlement in all of Western Europe, and it was discovered in a very strange way. It all happened when a farmer discovered the settlement on his property. At first, the farmer didn't know what he had found, but after some serious excavations, he realized he had an entire city buried underground on his property. This turned out to be Ciudad Abre, built over 5,000 years ago and preserved beneath grass and sand for thousands of years after, making it just about as perfect as the day it was built. The city likely only had about 50 or 100 residents, living in crude habitations built of rock and sand. We have no idea why the place was abandoned, who lived inside the rock houses, or where they went after. Still, it's safe to say that Ciudad Abre is one of the oldest, most remote, and most truly mysterious lost cities on Earth. Number 1. Ciudad Perdida. Ciudad Perdida translates in English to lost city, making it quite literally a lost city. This ancient place is located in Colombia. It's older than Machu Picchu, and almost nobody visits it. This is because it's hidden deep in the Colombian jungle, near the Caribbean coast in the north. It was originally built by the Tairona people at least 1,000 years ago, and it was only rediscovered in the 1970s. That's how incredibly remote the lost city of Colombia really is. The reason Ciudad Perdida is often compared to Machu Picchu is because they look kinda similar. Both the ancient cities were built on hillsides and hidden within the dense South American forest. However, the lost city in Colombia is at least 600 years older than its Peruvian counterpart. There's also no proper way to reach the ruins. You can only find the lost city by hiking for several days through the perilous jungle. There is literally no other way to get there. Because of its remoteness, there have not been a lot of popular investigations of the ancient city. While we definitely know who built it, we still don't have much of an idea about how the civilization operated or why they abandoned their hillside city. According to CNN, in 2003, a group of tourists, while on their way to find the lost city, were kidnapped and held hostage for 100 days. This is one of the reasons why people have some understandable reservations about wandering into the Colombian jungle to find the legendary Ciudad Perdida. Have you visited any of these ancient cities? If so, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching and come back soon for another amazing video. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe.